Welcome to Game Changers Live from Miami, Florida. My name is Sergio Tigera. I'm your host. And each and every week, we bring you someone who has been a game changer in their field and who's touched the lives of thousands to get their perspective on their journey, their mindset, their struggles and successes so that we can inspire you on your journey. So let's get started right now. And welcome to Game Changers Live. My name is Sergio, your host, and you can catch us each and every week on your favorite podcast channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, LinkedIn, you name it. We are here as well as Island TV, and we're coming to you live from their studio home at FIU in the College of Communications, Architecture, and the Arts. Hey guys, thank you so much for supporting the show, giving us a thumbs up, a subscribe, hitting the like button. That means a lot to us. It helps us understand that our content is engaging and impacting you in a big way. And we're now a top 2% podcast globally via Listen Notes. So thank you so much for everything you do. And my guest today is my man, Raymond Adderley, and he's a student leader, community activist, and he's a candidate for Broward County School Board. He's 18 years old, all right? He's 18 years old, my man. So you're an inspiration. You're definitely a game changer. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you. Oh my goodness. I was watching that video. Was that Judge Judy on?
No, but it was close. There's been a lot of game changers here, and people have done something extraordinary. And being 18 years old, so before we get into how and why you're running for school board at such a young age, let's take me back a little bit about your history. Kind of talk to me about kind of where you're from, what your upbringing was like, and then we'll get into, how you got engaged with this kind of work.
Sure. So thank you so much, Sergio, for having me on. And Game Changers, what's going on out there? Everybody that might be watching or might hear this later, it is such an honor to be on this platform this afternoon. And yes, my name is Raymond Adderley. I'm the youngest candidate, Afro-Latino, Afro-Caribbean male to ever run for Broward County School Board Seat 8. And if elected in August, and not if, when elected in August, I will be the first Black male to serve on the school board of Broward County in 15 years.
Wow.
I think that is shocking. I think that's alarming, especially for a district that is as diverse as Broward County. But more importantly, a little bit about me and my background. When I was 6 years old, my father was shot in front of me and my two younger brothers in my family in Miramar, in our home.
Wow.
It was an armed home invasion. And I remember sitting there when the attack began, and I began screaming. I was a first grader. I had just learned about stranger danger that day, and I was screaming. And the gentleman turned to me and he said, "You know what? If you don't shut that kid up right now, I'm going to shoot him." And my mother reached over my mouth from all the way on the other side, passing my two brothers, and covered my mouth. And it was that point in my life that I knew what it was like to be voiceless and have no one to speak for me or have no one to understand me. And so my rise to fame.
So hold on. We gotta stop there a minute. So you're 6 years old. You're at home. Was this at night?
It wasn't night. We were coming home from a Christmas show, and as we pulled up to our house, there was a black car on the side of the house. We didn't think much of it. People would park on the side of people's homes all the time, especially when you live on the corner house. So it was a cul-de-sac, and when you live on the corner houses, people park, by the fences and on the gates all the time. So we didn't think much of it. We just thought maybe there was a visitor, someone going to fish. There was a party down the street, and someone needed parking. And so as we got out of the car, is when the assault began.
Oh my God! So you were just coming into your house, and somebody followed you into your house to rob you guys.
Yeah.
And so you're 6, and you have a brother and a sister, or?
I have two brothers.
Two brothers. Wow. And so you're all in there, obviously afraid and shocked as a 6-year-old, would be. And this guy comes in and tells your dad to shut you up. And then what happened from there?
So there were 3 gentlemen that came into the house. 2 went into my parents' bedroom to steal, and 1 held my father at gunpoint. My father had a licensed gun that he had that was a concealed weapon. He had a license for that. And as he reached for the weapon, a gentleman rushed over to him, kicked him, threw him on the floor from the couch, and shot him 3 times.
That's horrible to have experienced something like that. And that was happening all in front of you.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so, I mean, that's such a traumatic experience. I can't even begin to imagine what you've gone through. What was it like then? How did you recover from that?
As a young kid, I never really understood what happened that night. I
Right.
remember going to the police office that same night to give my original testimonies. Me and my two younger brothers. I remember the funeral, and the whole entire time I was under the prejudice. I was under the presumption rather that my father was sleeping, because people told me, "Oh, he's sleeping, he's getting rest." And so,
Oh, wow.
as a 6 year old, I didn't know what death meant. I had experienced it before. It wasn't a conversation that people were casually talking about in the first grade. And so it was, very difficult to get through once you come to the realization of what death actually is, meaning you'll never see this person again. And so when it started to kick in, I would have angry outbursts. But more importantly, I think what kept me going was one, my belief in God, and I grew my faith very
Yeah.
strongly as a Christian, and then two, I began to divulge in so many extracurriculars, so everything from drama and theater all the way to music, playing the trumpet and singing. And I started doing sports. I stopped playing football. That was my dad's sport for me, and I picked up track. I started doing swimming. I started playing tennis. I started fishing, and those were things that I used to cope with recovering from my trauma. But more importantly, I think what urges me to get out and fight every day is the urge to advocate for others and do the best thing that we can do in our communities. And as a 6 year old, as a 7 year old, as an 8 year old, as a 9 year old, I continued to do that. I was a kindergartner. I was the first kindergartner ever at my school to join K Kids, and it was only open to first graders. By the second grade, I was the assistant secretary of the club. By the third grade, I was the secretary. By the fourth grade, I was the president. And in fifth grade, I was vice president of K Kids. And so
And K Kids is what, like a
Kiwanis
mini?
Kids. So are you familiar with Kiwanis International?
Oh, the Kiwanis. Yeah, of
Yeah,
course.
they have different branches. So when you're in elementary school, you do
Okay,
K
got it.
Kids.
Got
When
it.
you're in middle school, you do Builders Club. When you're in um, high school, you do Key Club. When you're in college, you do Circle K.
Right.
And so there's different levels to Kiwanis, building up to becoming an actual adult Kiwanian.
Mm.
And so those were the things that I did to deal with those things. But then I remembered, and I started. I remember as I'm older now. I remember those things actually made me so passionate. And I remember fighting, and people would call me stubborn all the time because I never wanted a project to go by me that I'd have to approve and sell for that wasn't doing the most good for people. And so I remember always being a strong fighter, being very stubborn into my ideals. If you talk to any of my class officers that I had the privilege of serving with in high school, they'll tell you, oh, he was the worst. He was so stubborn, but we always loved him because we always knew that his heart was in the right place. And so,
So let me ask you this. I mean, you could have gone a very different direction, right?
right,
Because you kept busy by doing all these extracurricular activities. You could have gone, very quickly sideways, right? How did you stay on the track? Was it your mom, your brothers?
I would say it was more so my grandma. She was, my mom's a single parent, my mom's a teacher. And so on the weekends, my mom would have to go and work more jobs to get more money, which, by the way, no teacher should have to do. And that's one of the
Right.
reasons why I'm running for school board. But more importantly, I would say that it was difficult, but my grandma kept me on the line. She kept me in church as a young kid. She made sure that whatever I needed, it was done. And in many ways, my mom did as well, but my aunt came behind whatever my grandma couldn't do, whatever my mom couldn't do. And so there was always a really big safety net of protection and both encouragement to keep on going and fighting for my dreams.
That's powerful because you really do need a village to raise a child, and especially in that kind of situation, that's got to be incredibly difficult. So you start getting involved in all these organizations and sports and everything else like that. You see that you're able to make an impact. What you started saying that that's where you got your passion to be the voice, right, for other people. How do you think that came about, and what is it about that makes that's so important to you?
Sure. So two-part answer to a two-part question. Well, first of all, I think that where that came about was my brothers. When we were young, we had a lot of older cousins who we had to live with and communicate with, and uncles and aunties that would pick on my family and my younger brothers, and I always had to step in the gap for them. And be there for them. And sometimes they didn't appreciate it because, they thought they were grown and they could handle their own battles, but they really couldn't because they had no way to do that. No one had taught them how to do that, because for some it comes naturally, and for some it's a learned trait to know how to be defensive and know how to advocate for yourself. And luckily, God has bestowed me with a great gift of being able to do just that. To be able to go out and fight for myself and fight for other people. And so the passion began there. When I had to fight for my brothers. And there's nothing that I'd rather do. Even today, I'll still go and fight for my brothers. And not in a physical way, obviously, but a verbal one, that is. I don't do fights. I can't fight. I'm a short guy. I'm 5'6", man. But that is what inspired me to do it. But why was that so important to me? Because, I would often ask myself, Raymond, who's speaking for people like you that lost their father, that's going from house to house, that's not having the best quality of life at the moment? Who's speaking for people like you? And I realized that nobody really was. And more importantly, nobody really cared. And so what that do to me? What it said, well, Raymond, if no one else is doing it, then why not you? And so that passion and why I do that is because I know that no one else will, if not me. And so I persist to continue to do that for every single person I come in contact with.
So then you go off and you become student body president, right?
Yeah.
A couple of years running and in high school. And so you're there, you're kind of fighting for what the students need. Then you graduate. And I was student body president in college, and I was a secretary in high school. So I kind of get a feel for that, right? So when you move from high school even into collegiate level, the politics takes a huge toll on you, right? And especially now you're going kind of past the college level into the school board. What makes you think mentally, you're prepared for that? Because it could get quite dirty sometimes.
Sure. And so, I think when you're talking to someone, Sergio, that witnessed their father die in front of them, be shot, there's nothing too tough for that person.
True.
That makes you so tough. In the Caribbean, we say it force ripes you. Us Caribbean people love our mangoes. And so when they come off the tree green, we put them in brown bags and we put them inside a dark cabinet, and we call that force riping. And so that's what that did to me. That's what that experience did to me. And so what mentally prepares me for, this is South Florida politics. I was listening to Michael Putney not too long ago, and he described South Florida politics in particular as a contact game. It gets rough and it gets tough.
Oh, yeah.
And it has. But you know what, Michael? Not Michael, Sergio. What's most important is the fact that through all the attacks on my age, on my experience, I have sustained, and what's more important? Every single day, this campaign gets a new vote. We get a different donation. And so you know why? It's because our campaign is people-powered, it's people-moved, and it's people-focused. And so all my other opponents who are playing this pay-to-play game, they're raising money, spending money, loaning themselves money to pay to play the game here in South Florida, buying support. That's all fine and dandy, but I reflect back to Michael Bloomberg or Philip Levine, who had all the money in the world and still could not achieve a victory. And so, it's tough. It's rough out there, but, I've been in this campaign since I was 16 years old in February of 2021.
That's incredible.
And now it's August 2022. I'm roughly about 4 days out from my election, and we are looking super good out there in the field. And more importantly, why do I think I'm ready? I'm ready because I know that our district is ready for change. And everybody in our district complains about how they're not being heard, how they're not seen, how their voices and the decisions that are made on the school board are not reflective of school life and what's happening in schools. So you know what? As someone who just graduated school, as someone who served in the highest student role there could be, as the student advisor to the school board for a year, sometimes I had to go through 139 items a week that faced the school board, and I had to sit through 6 to 8 hour meetings on Tuesday. But what's important is I feel strongly that there is no one, and out of 21 candidates running for school board in Broward County across different districts, there is no one more uniquely poised, more uniquely positioned to serve on a school board during this time than myself, because I get the experience. I know what it's like to have to be late to school because your bus was late, because there's a bus shortage or a shortage of bus drivers. I know what it's like to have to sit through a code red drill or an actual code red, because I lived that. And how many people can tell you that they lived through that? I am the only candidate, Sergio, out of 21 candidates running for school board in Broward County that went to school during a global pandemic, who is not a teacher. And so if those experiences don't qualify me to serve on a school board, then I would argue that, you know, being a realtor doesn't qualify you either, because what actual expertise do you have to sit on a school board and vote for teachers and students and parents when you don't understand what's being faced?
I love it, man. I love it. So what do you think are the top couple or three issues, that the school board has to face and the schools are facing right now?
Sure. And so on my campaign, we focus on 4 issues that are super important and that have had such a lack of response over the last 15, 20 years. Number one, mental health is so important, Sergio. We have been suffering with immense mental health problems in our district for years. And there's a school board member who I love very much. Her name is Nora Rupert. And she said she was hosting mental health town halls prior to Marjorie Stoneman Douglas in our district, which opened Pandora's box, by the way, on having mental health access. But what's more important is that after this global pandemic, we had students lose out at about a year and 6 months worth of social emotional learning. And what SEL pretty much is it is the combined factor of learning about other people's identities by having conversations. And so when students don't have that opportunity to do that, it crumbles them, especially at the elementary and high school level, when students are trying to figure themselves out. And so mental health access has to be equitable and accessible for all of our students in Broward County. And this district's response has been inadequate, not equitable, not accessible. You put on a 5-minute video about mindfulness and call that your approach to mental health. I call that bullshit. And so as a student who was sitting in those classrooms, having to take those mandated trainings, I will tell you how many kids was just doing this, Sergio. Can I go to the bathroom? No one is paying attention, because the approach to mental health has to be one-on-one. It has to be felt, and it has to feel genuine. And so what do I call for in Broward County? We have the infrastructure, as far as our budget is concerned, to increase the pay that we have for guidance counselors. My guidance counselor at Fort Lauderdale High School was the guidance counselor for 5 years at Fort Lauderdale. She became the guidance director in her 2nd year, left Fort Lauderdale this year. And I remember my last conversation with her. She was so excited that I was running for school board. And she said, Raymond, in tears, Sergio, I love what I do. And I love my job so much. But for me mentally, I do not make enough money to actually continue doing this job and also deal with the stresses it brings. So number one, making sure that we have enough money to pay guidance counselors and attract psychiatrists and sociologists that are coming out of college, to attract them to our district. Increase the amount of guidance counselors, family therapists, school psychiatrists that we have in our schools today for our staff and our students has to be object number one. Number two, in Broward County, we have a huge issue with infrastructure and facilities. We are the 6th largest school district in the nation. And it's time that our schools finally reflect that, especially when we are losing at an alarming rate in Broward County students to charter and private schools. Over the pandemic, we lost 40,000 students, taking our number from 269,000 total enrolled to 266,000 total enrolled. Every time a student leaves our schools, that is money that is leaving our schools that our budget does not get, that is lacking from a public school classroom. And why is that? Because as a parent, if I went out today and saw some of the schools in the district versus some of the very elite private schools and charter schools that we have in Broward, if I was interested and invested in my child's education and wanted to give them the best possible school experience, secondary education, I would send them to one of those. And that's me speaking. And so that's what I've been hearing from parents. And so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that, number one, we're doing what charter and private schools are doing. They're meeting class size mandates, making it easy on teachers to identify problems and crises in academics that students are dealing with. That is what they're able to do because they have the infrastructure to support more classrooms and more teachers. And it's about making sure our students from the inner city are coming to our schools where we're able to facilitate in a good way their extracurricular needs. So if that's state-of-the-art band rooms, if that's state-of-the-art basketball courts or athletic tracks, those things have to be prioritized to get this district back on the line. Number three, it's about expanding trade and vocational programs in Broward County. We have 4 technical colleges, 2 technical high schools in Broward. Some of them overlap, so 2 of them service both the high school and the college. But what's most important is our students are not getting trade certifications coming out of high schools. There are select high schools that give certain trade certifications and vocational trainings, but not enough to make sure that our students are both college and career ready, because not every student is going to go to college. We have to make sure that the students that are not going to college to get a degree are going to the workforce and making money. And the way we do that is we prepare them for free in our schools. And that is so important. And lastly, like I said, the most relevant teacher in my life is my mother. She's a teacher. And it's finally time. We've been hearing this for years, by the way, Sergio. It's time that we raise teacher salaries in a permanent way, not a temporary slap you in the face stipend one time or a bullshit bonus that teachers might get one time and one time only. And so for our teachers, they need to have more pay. So teachers are not working 2 and 3 jobs just to sustain, or teachers are not having to go out and get on welfare to sustain their families, because that is so crucial that our teachers are able to sustain and meet these new rising prices of inflation. And so I think those are 4 really big issues that our district is facing, and I have a solution to all of them.
All right, my friend. Thanks for being on the show. And by the way, where can the guys and girls reach out to you if they have any questions or want to connect?
Absolutely. You can go to RaymondAdderley.com. I like to describe myself as the most accessible candidate you'll ever find. So my email is Raymond@RaymondTakesNotes.com.
Awesome, my brother. All right, guys, that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed this episode. This was awesome. And be sure to like and subscribe and share this with a friend who needs to hear it. You could be a game changer in their life. See you next week. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives. If you loved what you heard in today's episode of Game Changers, please subscribe and rate us. The lessons and the stories in these podcasts are immensely valuable, so I invite you to share them with a friend who needs to hear it. You may end up being the game changer in their lives.